How's it going, Bonnie? And welcome to a recap episode of episode 12 on Sir Dan's D&D Acquisitions Incorporated with me and Nishi.
Hi, everybody.
I am Bolgan on the game,
And I am Aura, if
and
that isn't obvious.
well, due to unfortunate recording issues I had, unfortunately, with my OBS, I was not able to record the stream. But we're here to help out and let you know what may have been missed in the last episode for those who want to keep up with what's happened. So I guess I'll start with we first finished with discussions with Larry and went back inside the inn. So this actually took place with both of us. So basically, if you want to talk about where you were, I was more towards the back of the alleyway when this started. And we had just left from inside the building from the end of the last episode. And we met with Larry, who was giving us some not so great information.
Yeah,
You want to jump
he
in?
was. Yeah, he was just letting us know that he had thought that he'd seen multiple sources of people that were kind of out beyond the city. One of which being the person that he had come there with, and letting us know that things might be going down soon and it would be bad for the town. Which in turn didn't make me all that comfortable. I gave him a hug to try to calm him down. And me and Bolgan discussed, well, this is definitely information that even though Aura was very upset with Omen and what had occurred in the tail end of the previous episode, she felt it would be good for Omen and them to have this information.
Yes, and as this was going on, apparently my character had noticed with some rolls, though I personally didn't figure it was that big of an importance. A gnome was going into the church across the way, the new one with the which one was it? Was it the luck one, or was it the finance one?
It's very difficult to remember in the sense of what they were called. I know
it's the fancy church. I know that much. The other one's fallen down, and this is the fancy one. That's all I remember.
It was the one more north on the map for us. What I recall is that technically the two goddesses were like sisters or something, but they were like each an opposite side of the same coin. And one was for like luck, I believe, and one was for misfortune. But don't
like
quote me on that.
Anyway, so apparently after that we Riffin leaves in the start to head down towards the Busted Temple, and we run into him in the doorway coming back inside the building in order to pass on what we had just learned. We had I had leaned over and whispered to Riffin as he was leaving, like, hey, this is what's going on, and I informed him of the situation that we had just found from Larry. And then we proceeded to go inside and inform, well, if you want to jump in on that, because I know you're the one who talked to her.
We decide to go in to talk to Gilda about the situation.
Gilda, right? I can't remember her name.
Meanwhile, Riffin decides that he wants to go to this older temple and see about getting a curse removed that he had discovered that he ended up being cursed also, I believe, near the tail end of the previous episode. He has not told the group of this, and so there are aspects of our recap that are going to be a little bit wonky.
Yeah. But he did go to the other church, and he attempted to talk to the priestess about seeing about removing the curse. And I want to say, didn't she say something like it was out of her league or out of her power or something like that to be able to remove something like that?
What she said was that removing curses, usually it takes a lot of resources.
Okay.
And she talked to him about how the other church had been built up recently and how they had managed to get the finances and stuff, very similarly to how she had talked to me whenever I had first entered the temple when we came into town. And she offered him, in exchange for trying to deal with that church in a non-fatal way,
No murder
that,
hobo.
yes, that she would help to lift the curse off of him. So while that was going on, we talked to Gilda about what Larry told us. And I offered her to cover the cost for her to send another of those fancy written on paper spells to Omen. Omen, apologies, I still cannot pronounce the name.
Almond milk.
And we learned that that spell is a once a day spell. I still provide her the cost of the spell, or what she told me was the cost of the spell. So hopefully she will send the word to Omen about the situation.
I had actually asked to see if there was any way we could send a runner, or at least one on horseback, since it was 3 days by foot. I thought, hey, horseback would be great, but we were informed that this village apparently doesn't have stables. Not really sure how town can operate without horses, but whatever. So that was shot down pretty quickly.
Yes, and because of our previous encounter before we got to town, about a half hour or so out of town, there was a cart with horses attached. We thought it was a little bit peculiar.
Yeah, especially since I'd got the Luskin meat out of there, and apparently it came from this village to start with.
Based on Gilda's suggestions, we decided to go and talk to the miners building people. I sadly forget the name of their organization. We decided to go and talk to them to see if they have more information about these two horses and cart setup that we saw on the way out of town.
On our way down there... Oh, sorry.
And during all this, Jule has been somewhat quiet. She's in the process of getting things set up for one of her spells she is working on. So that is something, is she is kind of focused to getting down information for preparing for a spiritual weapon. So what her spiritual weapon is going to look like.
Which should be fun for future episodes. We did, after mentioning this, Riffin was coming out of the temple, and Ariella ended up trading places going into the temple as well, on our way down to the other shop.
Yes. So I go in, and I had already donated a very, very little amount to the temple before, and I decide to donate a little bit more finances, only about 25 gold, but it's still something. And hopefully that helps. My character Aura has no idea how much it cost to repair buildings, but as I was giving her the money, I was also thinking that my character didn't say this, but me out of character thought this, that if we manage to get certain things in the town squared up because of Bolgan's, past history, that maybe we can also help to rebuild the temple.
Yeah, there's a lot of stone everywhere, so rebuilding some stuff wouldn't be that hard. So that'd be a nice help for the town, especially for the old church, because sometimes the best is the old ones,
Mm-hmm.
After that, we were heading back to the mining place, which I believe was... Oh, it slipped my mind. I was thinking it for a second. A trading post of some kind.
Was it Lionsgate or something like that?
It might have been.
Like, I could try to look up what it is, but I don't want to potentially cause any sort of meta accidental knowledge.
It's fine.
So, yeah. So we go in there. Meet a woman
A dwarf
at,
woman.
at at the front desk
I failed
because
miserably at that. Because I tried to, strike up conversations, make things all, hey, how's it going? And she's like, I don't care. I felt defeated. But we did manage to get some information, particularly about the supply cart.
yes, we find out that it was a reliable supplier that could deliver goods from this town to Waterdeep that had been decimated.
Yes.
We also see that she has 4 bodyguards in her establishment, and that makes Aura a little bit uncomfortable.
It's odd to think that they are pretty much the only security left in town after the loss of the Golden Mongooses, but, well, except for the one guy who I think was a retiree, wasn't he?
I believe so. And we get warned to not trust the ex-mayor, though with how our party's experience was whenever we first came into the town, I don't think we necessarily have much trust in him at this point anyway.
For those who don't remember, he's the one who basically said, and outsiders like them! Trying to stir up the people in town against us, and anyone who just shows up. But we have some theories. We'll get into those after we get through all the talking points here. But basically, he's the ex-mayor. He used to own the mansion, and seems like he's got a bit of a grudge, but like she said, we don't really trust him to begin with, so it wasn't like we were going to lean on him for information anyway. Maybe lean into him, but not lean on him. After that, we ended up heading out towards the shop that I went to before, the normal trading post.
The general store.
General store, yeah. And we were looking at buying some items and trying to sell off the items that we had acquired in the previous battles, in the episodes.
Namely, the 2 armor sets.
Which didn't go as well as I'd hoped, personally, but I gotta flex my guns. And, well, like I said, didn't work as well as I'd hoped, but we did manage to sell off the platinum things, the little coins or whatever.
Yes, the platinum coins, which weren't actual platinum pieces. Platinum pieces run for 10 gold, roughly, in proper values. These sold 15 gold apiece. We also acquired, Aura bought some playing cards. Julie ended up purchasing 3 books, one that could be used as a journal, one that was a children's book, and one
Definitely
romance
not children's
novel.
book.
And then
Sorry.
Riffin wanted to also purchase some things, but didn't feel comfortable purchasing them in front of us. So Aura, Bulgan, and Julie, with some persuasion, decided to wait outside for him. He ended up getting I believe it was a steel mirror.
I believe it was, yeah.
And a fiddle or a violin of some sort. And while he's getting those, I talked to Bulgan about how me as a rogue character works when it comes to investigating for traps and things of that nature. Trying to help Bulgan understand why I was taking the forefront whenever we went into dungeons and the like, versus the bigger, stronger, more tanky person going ahead first.
Yes, he would have had a little trouble, wondering why the squishier person was in the front and not, letting him take the hits. But then again, when she's in the front, he doesn't take hits. No one takes hits. That's a good thing.
Usually. The rolls have been in my favor for the most part.
Yes. No one's fallen in pits of acid yet, so that's always a good sign.
Yes.
Then after that, we headed to the smithy on the upside of town. Now, if you remember the map, which unfortunately I don't have it up right now, it was on the north side of town where we first came in, across the street from the church we cannot remember the name of.
Yes.
But I did manage to get a new javelin from that location, due to the fact one of mine had melted in the acid that I pierced the guy's glass tank with in the previous episode. And found out again that I could not sell the armor. Apparently, they don't have the money for it, in the sense of it's well out of the cost range of what they can afford for the town. And apparently they don't want to have any, like, mafiosa hits on them or any kind of trouble, that is to say.
Yes. While Bolgan, Aura, and Jule went to the smithy to figure out this stuff, Riffin decided to go back to the inn to do some sort of ritualistic spell or some sort of spell that is outside my pay grade. I apologize, but as to not necessarily meta later on, I chose to try to not pay attention whenever he was stating exactly what he was going into with his spells. So we are at the smithy. She doesn't want to even touch the armor because of the markings of the drawn Enterprises logo on the armor, and says that it would be worth selling to a bigger city such as Waterdeep or Neverwinter, which is Waterdeep is at least 3 days travel away. So if we are going to be selling it, it would probably be after all of these issues are resolved. So till then,
Just a little bit extra gear.
Yes, potentially to keep just in the inn in our rooms until the issues are resolved.
Let's see. After that, I would say that we basically went back to the inn and waited for Riffin to get finished with his chance, wasn't it?
Some sort of spell or
Meditation
ritual
kind of thing?
casting
Yeah.
or whatever. Yes.
So we played cards for a while.
Yeah, we were playing Go Fish. And Jule was, I believe, reading her book at this time.
Yep. Now, which book's a different question altogether. I would like to think it was the lusty Dragonborn maid.
I'm not sure exactly who was involved in her book, but I know that she was giggling up a storm.
Yes, indeed. As we were playing this game, though, we did, the two of us actually had a little back and forth, letting in a little bit of the lore of
that
our
was
background.
actually a little bit later on.
Oh, it was? Okay.
Yes.
We were playing cards for a while. I forgot which part that was.
Yeah. We were playing cards. She was reading her book. Riffin shows up, and we have group discussions about if the ex-mayor is potentially involved in the destruction of the mansion because of his salty attitude when it came to all of that information, finding out that he used to own the place or live there or whatnot. And we were just kind of going back and forth, trying to be as quiet as possible, because we don't know if the walls have ears, about his involvement, if there was a spy who knew about the timepiece, all of that stuff. It was a very lengthy discussion, and we were just trying to figure out what may or may not have been involved with that.
Yeah, there's a lot of players and pieces we're not really sure who's on the board right now. I mean, we'll probably get to that in a little bit when we discuss more of our feelings on the story, but yeah, it just, he seems too much the culprit not to be involved somehow.
Yeah. So after group discussion and going a little bit back and forth of what we felt may or may not be involved, Riffin decides that he wants to get a little bit more, try to get more information or confirmation from Gilda about some of it, and then also warn her that they might be coming after her, as she is one of the two that are mentioned in that lovely little letter that had been sent to who knows where. So he and Jules go to talk to Gilda about that and try to confirm some facts. While they're doing that, that is when Aura and Bolgan have some downtime to have discussions about a little bit about their backstories and why they started traveling and what led them to the Acquisitions building in the first place.
I guess going in a little bit of that, since everybody missed it. Basically, my character, as mentioned in the first episode, was here for adventure, fun, and all that. But getting a little bit more into the background, he was an orphan, raised by dwarves. The family could not have any children, and basically they adopted, and they started with Bolgan, and decided that they would take in orphans that were less desirable from local orphanages. Dwarves generally would probably adopt more dwarf children, but I didn't really get into details in that, but each one is a different race. So it's kind of a mishmash house, and the children weren't exactly accepted super well by the other children. No relationships, no close friends, and yet they stayed as a tight knit family. He was good growing up, but Bolgan, being the oldest, realized that he needed to set a good example for the family, and set out on adventure to show, hey, if I can do it, you can do it. I'm sure he's a giant, but no one really talks about that part, you know. But he wanted to set a good example for his family, and help them break out of their shell and seek friends, spouses, and adventures of their own. And on his way south, he eventually happened upon the city where he basically, I say basically ran out of money. He was low on money, but probably ended up helping some old lady who was probably scamming him to begin with. And he ran out of money. He's like, oh, I need a job. And through a bit of persuasion through the local guild, he ended up coming to Acquisitions, looking for some form of employment of whatever matter they needed. And that's how he ended up in the situation.
With Aura, it was less happy fun times. She is actually the only child out of her parents' relationship, and she divulged to Bolgan that she was not human, that she was partially human, that her mother was human. She didn't say exactly what she was, though, which she might later on. But she is an Asimir, which is born from an angel and a human. It's pretty much the counter opposite of a tiefling, where you have a celestial parent. And the father ended up leaving at some point, still has not returned. And since Aura's childhood, her mother has always tried to kind of ground it into her that she's a good girl and she has so much more, for herself. And she's, she has the celestial blood, and, trying to build her up as this greater being. And Aura didn't necessarily take that well, and she decided, no, I'm my own person. You cannot tell me that this is the kind of person I am. I'm going to go out there and make a life for myself. I'm going to have my own name. I am more than the blood that runs in these veins. And so she kind of ran off to find herself. She's not a good person. My character is chaotic neutral for a reason. And so she went off and became a rogue and might have done a few things that some people would consider shady. Along the way, she had heard of Waterdeep and the financial potential in Waterdeep. And she ended up going to Ack Inc. because she felt that, hey, maybe with all of this stuff being involved and hearing that they were one of the best places to potentially have some finances, she thought, okay, maybe mercenary work or something. She had no idea that they were about a business, which we'll go into that a little bit more come the end of our PowerPoints.
All right, so basically the other two had been discussing, as we mentioned before, to Gilda about some stuff, finding out facts and stuff like that. In the process, they had come across an issue with missing livestock. Now, for me, missing livestock says somebody's obviously eating. Now, obviously it could just be a monster, but more than likely it could be the large group who was planning on attacking, feeding their army, or large force, depending on how you look at it, really.
Right.
And this was brought back to our attention when they returned to the room. In which case we had now two objectives, either to investigate the missing livestock. Now this is all taken place over a long morning period. It's about maybe a little bit afternoon, 1 o'clock-ish, I think.
Yes, which I find very fascinating, but again, going into that later.
But anyway, so we have two options at this point. It's either the livestock or the church. Which do we perceive as being the more priority of this situation? I went ahead and suggested a third option. I was like, maybe we should just look around the town outside, you know? But it's like, nah, we got two other options. We need to stick with one of those.
Aura pointed out that depending on how long it would take them to get out to the outsides of the city and try to find this group that might be out there somewhere, it would potentially be very late, or we wouldn't have much time in the
Mm-hmm.
sense of going out there, investigating, and then coming back, considering half the day was already gone. So Aura's thoughts on it was, let's go and try to look into this church a little bit more and potentially deal with the missing livestock situation later when we have a little bit more time in the day to at least try to look around. Riffin's thoughts were, we can look into the church anyway because I'm cursed, and they might see it as me just going there to try to get the curse removed.
Which is a good alibi, too, because it kind of gives us a reason to be there without raising too much suspicion. Because, I mean, you know, four people walk in, weapons drawn, it's like, we want to talk to you. It's like, what?
So, yes, the group roughly decides that we will look into the church. And once we actually reach that decision, the session comes to an end. So that's the recap of session 12.
There was no combat, so you didn't miss anything. There was a few rolls, but nothing too much.
Yes, this was a strictly very RP heavy episode.
Which is one reason why that we did a recap, because it's like, well, we really didn't miss any combat, so rather than
But
try and get a hold of that video and do that, this was a little bit easier in my opinion. It covers pretty much everything.
everything in a shorter amount of time. And if there's any lore or stuff like that, it makes it a lot easier versus having episode 13 show up and people wondering, hey, where's episode 12? And weren't you guys with Larry? So, yeah.
Good old Larry. Oh yeah, since we got open discussion now, Larry is in hiding again. We sent him off to investigate, but not to put himself in too much danger. Basically, he's acting as our kind of like intern spy kind of deal.
Yes.
Trying to help us find out what's really going on with this situation.
We told him to lay low because we are not precisely sure how the town would react to him being here. Aura specifically said she doesn't know much about other races in certain environments and whether or not they're welcome or not. And so he might be hiding up at the mansion or in the woods somewhere. But we did suggest, hey, if you hear anything else, come back, let us know, but don't put yourself at risk.
Yes, a dead spy gets no information over a spy who fled, so. Also, going back to the mayor situation, he feels like a Scooby-Doo villain, in my opinion. He feels like someone who, you know, has all the reason to hate Acquisitions Incorporated. They took his job. He was the single mayor who ran the entire city by
He
himself.
also has the most finances of the city,
I mean,
so
he owned the freaking giant mansion. So, I mean, we took everything from him. If you think about it, Acquisition Incorporated took over, threw him out, put a council of mayors in, basically, to run the place, took his house, and to me, that pretty much screams, yeah, I want to get revenge on these guys.
now we know a couple facts. One, we know that Drawn Enterprises was involved. Specifically, we know that they were involved because of the lovely cleanup crew that came to try to kill us, though all we wanted was to get out of there, and we would have left. We would have left without a fuss and without any sort of combatant things.
Yeah, those two
And
plate armors I have actually have the drawn symbol on them, too.
yes. So between that, between information we found in the establishment, in the basement, in the hidden sections of the basement.
Yeah, it's all not looking too good for the intrepid heroes and their,
Sadly, none of the Acquisitions Inc. people are alive to tell us if they knew of the hidden passages in the cellar.
and we're still looking for the
Because
missing person.
the tiefling.
Yeah. She gone and poofed out of existence, and no one knows where she went. I want to
Part
say,
sorry.
oh, I forgot the name again. Walls' character,
Jule?
Jule. Yeah, Jule had, I think, mentioned that they wanted to teleport themselves or something, and we're all like, that's a bad idea. Because we don't know where that goes.
Yes, it could go potentially to an alternate dimension or reality where perhaps those gibbling mouthers were in. We have no idea where it goes, nor does she know how to operate the coin piece. Excuse me, the time piece. I'm slightly frustrated, to be all honest, because if there was at least one Acquisitions Inc. person still alive, we could see if any of them knew about the secret passages, as is we could ask the women that we found in the cellar, because they obviously sort of know because, it was open and they were thrown in there.
Yeah.
We could also ask Gilda, because she was found above on like the first floor or whatever, just how much of the mansion that she knew about or was involved in. Because personally, if the mayor lived here or was sanctioned here before, there is a good chance that he knew of this, lower bit. If the Inc. people didn't, but the mayor did, he could have taken that information, given it to the Drawn Enterprises people, and them sneak in through the secret sections of the lower cellar.
After all, there was that dugout portion that had collapsed after we left. So
Exactly.
that might have been the entrance into the tunnel they took to kind of burrow their way in and ambush them. Because you got to think, they took out an entire group of Golden Mongoose and the Acquisition Incorporated people without seeming to, get the drop on them. So maybe they came in from behind, and why, they might be sitting there thinking, oh, we're safe, our doors are shut, and everything's locked up. They're getting assassinated, inside their own building.
I feel that's the only way that this could have gone down, because it seems like the only way up to the Acquisitions building is via the road that is connected to the town. Unless they were to scale the hills or slight mountainsides or whatever it is, those parts around where the Ac Inc. building is. I feel it's the only way without drawing attention.
Yeah. And do you remember what the curse was on Riffin? I'm having a little trouble remembering that.
I think he had negatives to his rolls.
Negatives, okay. Yeah, he had not brought... I want to say, didn't he say something about the curse afterwards, right?
I don't think he's told us about the curse at all.
Okay.
But I know that the DM told us in story, told Riffin specifically in story that he was cursed after we'd already cleared out the mansion. Had he had been cursed before that point, it might have gone worse for us in the mansion.
Because I know that he said he wanted to go to the church to deal with the curse, but I don't remember if he told us it was because of the curse, or if he just said he had a reason to go to the church.
I don't think he told us. I know he left the inn while we were going in. We told him, he said that we could meet him or find him at the temple, but he did not specify as to why he was there. And we didn't ask because Aura specifically doesn't care what, anything about factions of religion. So he could have just been there praying for the fact that we made it out of the mansion alive.
Or for more bonusing good luck for the future. Whichever it was. But, yeah, I'm thinking we covered about everything. Is there anything else that you think stands out?
Well, we can discuss our favorite parts about the episode or parts that we felt dragged a little bit.
Well, let's get the negative parts, I guess, out first. There was some problems with progressing the overall time, I guess you could say. Like, I feel like some of the times we were asking the wrong questions in the wrong order or something like that.
Yes. I did feel that the discussion, the group discussion about the potential of spies and if the mayor was involved uh, it was a little bit longer than it necessarily had to be. I felt that the information that we had gained prior to this conversation, based on the note that we found, what information Gilda had given us before, things of that nature, I thought as Aura that we had enough information to ascertain that if there was a spy, then it was a spy that was actually a part of either Acquisitions Inc. or the Golden Mongoose, and it couldn't have been someone from the outside who wasn't fully involved in company business.
The mayor doesn't really have access to the insides of what was going on inside the mansion. So even though it's I would say, government building slash hideout slash a whole bunch of things, he's not exactly going to have Acquisition Incorporated's, oh, hey, look at this thing we found. This is what we think it does. Not going to be the case. So
yes,
it would have to be somebody who was probably inside the building initially.
Yes, and that's the other thing, is we're not sure if this occurred because of the timepiece or if the timepiece just happens to be there. Because if the mayor is involved in this situation with Drawn Enterprises and they decided to take the building down, perhaps the mayor has nothing or no interest in the timepiece, but obviously Drawn Enterprises might, unless the timepiece itself is a red herring. We're not sure if the timepiece is a red herring or not.
As a matter of fact, that's how I feel with the mayor, too, because he may have brought Drawn over here, but I don't think he's responsible for burning down the building he probably wanted back or anything.
No, but he might have a hand in involvement.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt that the discussions on that seemed a little bit more elongated with the time it was discussed than it necessarily had to be. But I do also understand that all of us as players were trying to figure out where to start looking.
Yeah.
Obviously, Gilda being one of the two that they weren't able to catch and kill, she is a person of interest to their group, her and the tiefling. And that's one of the reasons why Riffin decided to go and warn her / get more information from her and try to confirm or at least lock out what potential of spies there was.
And the other part I had a problem with, which really isn't much, is the fact that the no stables.
That to me did seem fairly odd, especially given that I think the closest town from here is 3 days travel.
Yes.
And if you're going to be traveling 3 days from point A to point B, we might not have a cart or horses or anything, but other people that are doing that kind of traveling might. And that being the case, personally, if I were to put logic in this, I would not travel 3 days to just spend a day in a place. I would be there a couple days, which means overnight for 1 night minimum. And I'd be wondering, where am I going to keep my horse that is safe, that I don't have to worry about someone stealing the horse or the horse, getting spooked and wandering off? Exactly. So to me, that seemed very curious. Unless there used to be a stable and they destroyed it for the church, in which case that kind of makes sense and makes the church even more suspect.
Yeah.
Which, honestly, I know that it's a module. I would have totally thrown that in there. if for no
Yeah.
other reason than to make the church look a little bit more suspicious. Because the new church, while it does seem,
It's all fancy, but it's an underhanded fancy because it works for Drawn's the one who financed it.
my personal opinion and Aura's opinion is, with such a small town, it seems almost rude to come in with another church
Mm-hmm.
and pretty much destroy the old temple. Now, mind you, I'm not saying they physically, you know, destroyed it, but I am saying because the new church is there, it's causing this other church to kind of go into ruin. I think that's what they're trying to establish with this.
Yeah. Well, probably using the same church as a front to help disguise their intentions.
Potentially.
And we'll find out probably more about the church in the next episode, so make sure to stay tuned for that.
Yes. Now, things we liked about the episode.
Well, our little lizard friend is, of course, a serious plus.
Yes.
And the serious gun show of the blacksmith lady was a total badass.
Yes. The smithy is a woman, and she's a human woman, and she does very decently at her job. She was able to take a full armor set from Bolgan without much issue and inspect it. And even Aura at that point had to admire the woman. Like, she admired her anyway for doing this kind of work.
Mm-hmm.
Blacksmithery is not an easy job
Not at all.
by any means. So that was one thing. I really liked the interaction that the talking that Aura and Bolgan were able to share during this, to be
I
able
agree.
to develop a little bit more about their characters and the backstory and have a sort of more of a connection.
Yeah, they're definitely becoming good friends for sure.
Yes, the last couple episodes, it seems like out of everyone, Aura is able to talk to Bolgan a little bit easier than the others, which has both a good and a bad. Riffin's character, from what I understand, is very introverted, but he will work with the group because in order to get wherever it is that his goal is heading, I believe. And I think that Jule works with the group in order to attain her goals as well. And I don't know where she's headed, but I'm sure it's something fabulous.
And fun. Certainly fun, whatever the choices are.
Yeah.
Let's see. Uh, I guess for me, finding out the town isn't totally defenseless, especially with the other mercantile location having guards, made me feel a little bit safer about the town's protection once we leave. Because right now, we're pretty much it. It's us, the retired mongoose, and the guards. As far as we know, just knowing that we have some kind of security, at least a little bit, put me at slight ease. Because I'd be like, man, I don't think I'd even want to leave here, you know?
Yeah, that's part of the thing with Aura. Aura, she is usually one for, all for myself, get out of a dire situation. But her attitude is slowly shifting in the week or so that she's been a part of this four-person group, having to be slightly reliant on others. It's definitely an interesting feeling for her. And if it wasn't for the fact that she had seen all of those bodies of the Golden Mongoose and the Acking people, and who knows who else in that basement, her attitude might roughly be the same of, let's just get the heck out of here.
Mm-hmm.
But because of all those people that died probably very quickly, she has her doubts that her and the other three can take on this group and what they're capable of. And she is a little bit worried about this town, because if those people had any sort of defensive abilities and they're gone now, and they might have been higher ranking and have more knowledge and more experience than us four interns, it worries her about what will happen to this town, even with them being there.
This might be a good time to segue over to. I know we'd already discussed the negatives, but the feeling on the corporation itself. I know you and I have had a little discussion about that before, about those in charge and their general handling of people and products, I guess you could say.
Yes, one of the reasons that Aura just got up and left outside of the inn after the message was sent the first time to Amon about what had taken place in the mansion, and that included all of the bodies and whatnot, all of that information. And in return, getting a response that was more like, good job, okay, here's the next thing, versus any sort of acknowledgement or any sort of empathy towards those that fell, that were a part of the corporation or a part of this town. It really triggered a lot of anger for Aura, because she's not a good person, but even she would acknowledge that these people probably died just because they were there.
And if we had gotten hired earlier, it could have been us.
If we would have gotten hired earlier, if we had gotten here sooner, but even if we'd gotten here sooner, the fact is we were sent out whenever, oh, they haven't sent their payment, you should go and check. Like, I don't know if they tried to message or excuse me, sending these people or sent any sort of courier or anything. They obviously hadn't done that, and so they sent us to go investigate, which tells me that all they cared about was their money.
Yeah. The lack of empathy for their own employees makes my character, who is very much about friends, about family, about, really enjoying the adventure, it makes him very uncomfortable. Because he wants to make sure his friends are safe, and he's like, what is this group? I've never met people who don't care about human life, or any race for that matter. But, it's like, what am I doing here? Because these guys, am I just another coin to be tossed into the well if something goes wrong? And it makes him very nervous to, be involved in this.
I have been told that the personality of Ullman is that he is extremely business oriented, and his his personal skills, his interactions with people are different. Now, that to me is very interesting, because sometimes I understand that in a business you have to, separate certain emotions to succeed in some types of businesses. At the same time, I feel like having, you know, not like full on, this is my best friend kind of personal relationships, but at least stronger connected working relationships could potentially make the business stronger. It kind of flips it on its head a little bit, and it definitely makes Aura uncomfortable at the very least, and somewhat angry at to put it nicely, um that this stuff's going on, and you know it's just, okay, you found this, here's your next thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, even though Aura isn't a good character, she does have a sense of humanity about her.
Yeah.
So the corporation right now isn't shining in the best light
Yeah, for either one
for
of us.
for Aura's opinion. But if it's Drawn Enterprises that burn this place down,
Send a cleanup crew and everything to get rid of evidence and, leave everybody wondering what happened to their loved ones. And, yeah, it's definitely a messy corporate situation. And definitely outside our pay grade.
yes, we are we were supposedly told that we are very lucky that we don't have to go through the entire hiring processes and testing and stuff because they messed up in sending us, the wrong group, into the underground the first time. But we gained no apology, and what finances we did receive did not seem like it was near enough for the amount of trouble we went through as a group that had no experience and, brushed against death a couple times while down in those sections.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if he would have at least kind of paused to apologize, then maybe he wouldn't be on the wrong side of Aura's thought process. But again, this is a module, and these characters are as written. And if this is the person's personality in general, if this is how they are written in general, then I'm not sure exactly what they were expecting players to feel for this character.
Yep. Any other thoughts?
Let's see here. I think that pretty much wraps up everything that I can personally think of.
About the
I
same for
hope
me.
I hope that we get answers,
Oh, yeah.
and I hope that we get some sort of decent conclusion to the issues at hand.
And some backup.
Yes. And hopefully we can figure things out, because as of right now, Aura is definitely questioning a lot of the business aspect of this, and she is definitely questioning whether or not she wants to continue trying to build a relationship with this business.
Yeah, Noble's about the same way. He's quite nervous about how things are turning out. This is not what he was expecting in the sense of corporate. He was probably thinking, growing up with miners that, oh, everybody makes jokes, hangs out, has fun. Not fights off guys with acid flamethrowers and getting attacked by giant poo monsters and stone feet.
I mean, to be fair, that is definitely some of adventuring, but even with that, there are other aspects to it that aren't necessarily showing up at this point.
Mm-hmm. But I think that's about it. So thank you
Thanks.
for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
And I appreciate y'all for sticking around and trying to find out what happened in the last episode. Hopefully this recap helped you out, kept you up to date, and also helped you find out about how our characters are both doing and feeling in regards to this story. So I appreciate y'all for joining me again, and make sure to check us out on Fridays on Serdan's about to say Discord,
Twitch channel.
Twitch channel. And stay tuned and watch and find out more. So see y'all next time.
Bye.
Bye bye.